On a cold winter night in 2012, in an old house in Indianapolis, Indiana, a young woman named Emily, whose name has been changed, was home alone. Her parents were away on a business trip, and her younger brother was sleeping over at a friend's house. Emily, usually a strong person who didn't easily believe in ghosts, felt a strange sense of unease engulfing the house tonight. Outside, the wind howled in gusts, and the dry branches scraped against the windows, creating eerie sounds. Emily sat on the sofa in the living room, trying to focus on a horror movie on TV to dispel the feeling of loneliness and anxiety. But the more she watched, the more uneasy she felt. The ghostly images on the screen seemed to be haunting the space around her. Suddenly, Emily heard a strange noise coming from upstairs. It was the sound of very light footsteps. But in the silence of the late night, it became incredibly clear. Emily quickly turned off the TV. Listening intently, the footsteps came again, this time louder, as if someone was walking in her bedroom upstairs. Emily felt her heart beat faster. She was sure she hadn't misheard. Emily tried to calm herself down. She thought maybe it was just the wind or the familiar sounds of this old house. But the footsteps continued, sometimes soft, sometimes louder, as if someone was deliberately trying to get her attention. Emily began to feel truly scared. She didn't know who or what was in her attic. Emily decided she had to go check what was happening. She picked up the flashlight on the table and carefully stepped out of the living room. The house was pitch black, with only the faint light from her flashlight illuminating the way. A cold and silent atmosphere enveloped every corner. Emily tiptoed up the stairs, each step she took producing terrifying creaking sounds. When she reached the top floor, Emily found the hallway pitch black. She shone her flashlight down the hallway, looking at the closed doors of the rooms. Everything was eerily silent. Emily walked to the door of her bedroom, where she had first heard the footsteps. She gently pushed the door, and it slowly opened. Emily's bedroom was as dark as ink. She shone her flashlight inside, but saw nothing unusual. Everything was exactly as she had left it before. Emily felt confused. So where did those footsteps she heard come from? Maybe she had imagined it all. As Emily was about to turn around and go downstairs, she suddenly heard a very soft whisper right behind her. A high-pitched and cold voice said, "You are not alone." Emily froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She slowly turned her head, looking into the darkness behind her. She saw no one, but she was sure she had just heard a voice. After the chilling whisper, Emily stood frozen, her whole body stiff with fear. She tried to take deep breaths to regain her composure, but her heart was still pounding wildly in her chest. She couldn't explain what had just happened. She was sure she had heard a voice, a cold and threatening voice, but she was the only one in the house. Emily slowly turned around, shining her flashlight all over the dark hallway. No one was there. The bedroom doors were still closed. Emily felt a growing sense of unease. She had the feeling that someone was hiding in the shadows, watching her every move. Emily decided she had to check the entire upstairs. She tiptoed down the hallway, shining her flashlight into every nook and cranny. Everything was still quiet and nothing seemed out of place. But the feeling of being watched did not disappear. Emily felt like an invisible shadow was lurking somewhere around her. When Emily reached the end of the hallway, she suddenly saw something strange at the far end. It was a blurry black shadow hovering in the air. The shadow had no clear shape, it was just a dark mass moving slowly. Emily stood frozen, staring in horror at the shadow. She couldn't believe her eyes. Was this a ghost? The black shadow slowly moved towards Emily. She felt an icy chill envelop her. Emily tried to step back, but her back was against the wall. She was trapped, unable to escape. The shadow came closer and closer, and Emily could feel a terrible malice and hatred emanating from it. Emily tried to scream, but her throat constricted, and no sound came out. She closed her eyes tightly, waiting for the worst to happen. But then, nothing happened. Emily slowly opened her eyes. The black shadow was still hovering in front of her, but it didn't come any closer. It just stood there, silently observing her. After a terrifying moment of silence, the black shadow began to move towards the ceiling. It slowly faded into the darkness, leaving Emily alone in the cold and silent hallway. Emily felt her legs go weak. She had just faced something completely supernatural and terrifying. Emily hurriedly ran downstairs, wanting to get away from the top floor as quickly as possible. When she reached the first floor, she turned on all the lights in the house. The bright light seemed to dispel some of the fear within her. Emily slumped onto the sofa, trying to catch her breath. She didn't know what was happening, but she was sure her house was no longer safe. Emily decided she would call her friends to come sleep over. She didn't dare stay here alone for another second. While waiting for her friends to arrive, Emily constantly felt like someone was watching her from the shadows. She didn't dare take her eyes off the front door. She felt like she was trapped in a terrifying nightmare. After her friends arrived, Emily felt a little safer. But the fear still haunted her. They stayed up all night, talking and trying to find a logical explanation for the strange phenomena Emily had experienced. But no one could come up with a satisfactory reason. The next morning, when Emily's parents and brother returned, she told them everything. At first, they didn't believe what she said, thinking she was just hallucinating due to fatigue. But when Emily insisted that what she had experienced was real, they began to worry. Emily's parents decided to look into the history of the house. They contacted older neighbors and searched for information online. They discovered that the house was very old and that many strange stories had occurred here in the past. One neighbor told Emily's parents that in the 1950s, a family living in this house had encountered terrible things. The mother in that family was said to have suffered from mental illness and had committed suicide in the upstairs bedroom. Since then, people often heard mournful cries and saw shadowy figures lingering in the house. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine when she heard this story. She thought maybe the black shadow she had seen was the spirit of that woman. But why did her spirit appear so full of hatred? A few days later, when Emily was home alone in the afternoon, she suddenly heard a strange noise coming from the basement. It was a loud crash, as if something had fallen to the floor. Emily felt her heart sink. She had carefully locked the basement door before her parents went to work. So what was that noise? Emily cautiously went down to the basement, carrying an iron rod for self-defense. The stairs leading down to the basement were dark and damp. When she reached the bottom, Emily shone her flashlight around the basement. She saw that everything was as it had been. Nothing was broken or out of place. Emily felt confused. So where did the loud noise she heard come from? She ventured deeper into the basement, trying to find the source of the sound. When she got near the far end of the basement, she suddenly heard a very soft voice calling out from behind a stone wall. The voice sounded like a child's, very weak and distressed. "Mommy." Emily froze, her heart pounding. She was sure she had just heard a voice. But who was calling her mommy? And why was it coming from behind this stone wall? Emily approached the stone wall and pressed her ear against it, listening intently. The voice came again, this time clearer. "Mommy, help me." Emily felt a surge of horror and pity. She believed that someone was trapped behind this wall. Emily tried to find a way to open this stone wall. She shone her flashlight along the wall, looking for cracks or unusual signs. Finally, she saw a few bricks that looked slightly different from the others. Emily tried to push hard on those bricks, and to her surprise, one of them came loose. Emily carefully pried the brick out, creating a small hole in the wall. She shone her flashlight inside and was horrified by what she saw. Behind the wall was a small, narrow, secret room, and inside, she saw the skeleton of a child huddled in the corner. Seeing the child's skeleton in the secret room, Emily felt utter horror. She couldn't believe that something so terrible had happened right in her own house. Emily hurriedly pried out a few more bricks to widen the hole in the wall, enough for her to see more clearly inside. Emily's flashlight beam shone into the small room. She saw the child's skeleton sitting huddled in the corner, its arms wrapped tightly around its head. The clothes on the skeleton were rotten and almost disintegrated. Emily felt a pang of pain in her heart. She wondered who this child was and what had happened to her. Suddenly, Emily saw something shiny on the floor next to the skeleton. She carefully reached into the room and picked it up. It was a small necklace, the pendant made of silver and engraved with a butterfly. Emily felt a lump in her throat. The necklace looked very familiar. She seemed to have seen it somewhere before. Emily remembered the stories the neighbor had told about the family who lived in this house in the 1950s. The mother suffered from mental illness, and they had a young daughter named Lily. Emily suddenly realized this necklace was very likely Lily's. A terrifying thought flashed through Emily's mind. Could it be that Lily didn't commit suicide as people rumored? Could it be that she had been imprisoned and died in this secret room? Emily felt a surge of anger and pity. Just then, Emily suddenly heard a very loud noise coming from upstairs. It was the sound of heavy, hurried footsteps, as if someone was running down the stairs. Emily startled, quickly pulling her hand back and looking towards the staircase. She felt a danger approaching. The footsteps got closer and closer, and just a few seconds later, a tall, dark figure appeared at the basement door. The shadow had the shape of a man, but his face was obscured in the darkness. Emily felt utter terror. She knew this was not a normal person. The shadow slowly moved towards Emily, a hoarse voice echoing in the basement. "You found it." Emily felt her legs go weak. She couldn't move, couldn't say a word. She could only stand there, staring in horror at the approaching shadow. The shadow raised its hand, and Emily saw a gleaming knife in his hand. She closed her eyes tightly, waiting for the worst to happen. But then, a terrifying scream echoed, not from her, but from behind the shadow. Emily opened her eyes and was astonished to see the ghost of the woman she had seen upstairs lunging at the dark figure. The ghost of the mother, protecting her deceased daughter. A terrifying battle between two supernatural forces unfolded right before Emily's eyes. The ghost of the mother lunged at the dark figure with a scream full of fury. The two supernatural forces collided, creating a cold gust of air and a piercing screech. Emily stepped back, watching in horror as the battle unfolded. The dark figure growled like a wild animal, swinging the knife towards the ghost. But the ghost seemed unaffected by physical attacks. She glided through the blade, her fingers passing through his body. The ghost of the mother retaliated, her cold fingers touching the dark figure's face. He groaned in pain, stepping back, His face gradually became clearer in Emily's flashlight beam. Emily was horrified to recognize him as the man her parents had found information about in the house's history. He was the husband of the woman who had committed suicide and also Lily's father. It turned out that this man had not only imprisoned and starved his wife to death but had also locked his own daughter in the secret room in the basement. Perhaps he had done it for some sick reason. Or maybe because Lily had discovered the secret of her mother's death. The ghost of the mother continued to attack the man. Her fury seemingly limitless. She wrestled him to the ground. And groans and growls echoed throughout the basement. Emily stood motionless, not daring to intervene. She felt like she was witnessing a terrible punishment from the afterlife. The battle between the two ghosts happened very quickly. In the end, the ghost of the mother overpowered the man. A heart-wrenching scream echoed, and the dark figure of the man completely vanished, as if he had never existed. After the man disappeared, the ghost of the mother slowly turned to look at Emily. Tears still lingered on her face, but her eyes were gentler. She smiled faintly at Emily. A sad but grateful smile. The ghost of the mother pointed towards Lily's skeleton in the secret room, then looked up at the ceiling. Emily understood. She wanted to rest in peace with her daughter. Emily nodded, promising the ghost that she would take care of everything. The ghost of the mother nodded slightly in return, then slowly faded into the air. The basement returned to its eerie silence. Emily felt a strange sense of relief and peace. She knew she had just witnessed something extraordinary, and she had helped two unfortunate souls find their release. After that terrifying night, Emily called the police and recounted the entire story. She took them down to the basement, showed them the secret room and Lily's skeleton. The police conducted an investigation and found evidence confirming Emily's story. They also found old documents in the house, confirming that the man had once lived there and had a dark past. Lily's remains were taken for examination and were later buried next to her mother. Emily attended the funeral of the two, feeling a sense of peace that they had finally found rest. The old house still stood there, but the strange phenomena no longer occurred. Emily and her family continued to live there, but they never forgot what had happened. Emily always felt a warm and protective presence in the house, as if the spirits of Eliza and Lily were still with them. Emily had learned a profound lesson about the spiritual world and the existence of supernatural forces. She knew that not all ghosts were scary. Sometimes they were just lost souls seeking help. Emily's story is a reminder that the world around us holds many mysteries that we cannot yet explain. Always be cautious and respectful of what we cannot see. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, remember to hit the subscribe button on the channel so you don't miss our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.